Java with Joe, the podcast, is brought to you by Kemba Credit Union, celebrating over 90 years of quality service to our membership. Sponsored in part by First Choice Coffee, the official coffee of Java with Joe, and Real Vision. And now your host, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Westchester Liberty Chamber Alliance, Joe Hinson.
Thank you. We're here with Jeremy Rosenbeck, President of Republic Wire. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thanks, Joe. Good to be here.
Good to have you. Let's get started with your father, Ron Rosenbeck, who started Republic Wire in 1982, but actually was in the copper industry since 1973. So he got started, decided that he wanted to go off on his own. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. In our business, we have agency groups, and we basically employ those agency groups to sell our products. And he was working for one of those agency groups here in Ohio, one of the largest ones in the country at that time. And he was the treasurer and decided that he thought manufacturing was the way to go. So took a couple of guys from the agency group in the beginning, took a small 3,000 square foot area of their warehouse and started doing some repackaging of domestic and foreign goods and started selling it to the utility market, and it went on from there.
So let's talk about that warehouse, because I think initially, obviously, didn't have a place per se for business. And the warehouse, I believe, was on Union Center Boulevard, and it was really somewhat of a leap of faith at the time, because there was really not a Union Center Boulevard in 1994 when he started.
Right.
It was and as I think everybody knows, it didn't open until 1997. So talk a little bit about that transition and the leap of faith that he had on recognizing that this is what it looked like then. It was going to change to here we are today.
Yeah, I don't know that we ever thought that it would get to this, but when he first moved out here, he was one of the first of the two buildings out here, Westchester Holdings being the other one. Joined in right over by there by them, got a small 1 acre lot or something of that nature, 40,000 square feet total, and really just took a chance on the idea that this was a growing area, and it was starting to develop, it was starting to grow up. I remember all the way back in high school, I lived in Forest Park. I had come out here. There was nothing out here but farmland. So so from a lot of those things, you couldn't have expected that it would get to this level necessarily.
Right.
But we were hoping that obviously it would grow as a township and that we could be part of that township and continue to watch it grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And a person that really was instrumental in helping him make that decision was somebody that I think local people know, Dick Alderson.
Yeah, that's kind of a common name around here. Yeah. But yeah, Dick was the Westchester Holdings owner, and he sold that lot to Ron to start. Yeah, absolutely.
Very good. So, Republic Wire, when it originally started, was known as a bare copper specialist.
Yes.
That's changed over the last 43 years.
Yeah, it has. It's quite dramatically, actually. What I was saying with that 3,000 square feet, we were just basically bringing in bare copper. So when we went to the agencies, we considered ourselves bare copper specialists. And for the first 10 to 15 years of the existence of Republic Wire, Ron basically sold bare copper. Mm-hmm. And then once we started getting into insulation, we started outsourcing some products, doing some different things, we kind of transformed a little bit.
Yeah, I'll say. So let's talk a little bit about you, Jeremy. You mentioned that obviously living in Forest Park, coming to this area. You started working at Republic Wire in 1989 while you were still in high school.
I did. I started by putting reels together. Doing a little bit of machinery work, repackaging some materials, things like that. To be perfectly honest, it was my best way to realize I didn't want to be working out in a warehouse putting reels together the rest of my life. So it sent me down a path that definitely was a little bit different. From there, I went on, decided I wanted to show myself that I could get my own job, support myself, all those good things. Went out and actually worked at the La Roses in Tri-County for 4 or 5 years, on and off. All the time working a little bit at Republic. So it was my first entry into the business. Sure. It gave me a taste of it. It gave me a good look at it. It allowed me, when I went off to college, to say, hey, this is something that I may want to do later in life. Sure. So it was a great spot for me to start. Yes. And I always say that one of the best things about my history, of my track record, of my career, is that I've touched a little bit of everything. So when I go out and I promote our company, I can talk very educatedly about all the different aspects.
Absolutely.
And to the point where actually nowadays, even when we bring in new salespeople, we make them work in the warehouse for a period of time because it's such an invaluable experience.
Oh, absolutely. I can see that. So you mentioned that you recognize this was not something you wanted to continue. You mentioned obviously going to college. You went to Mount Union College.
Yes, I did.
Right, and you got your degree. You mentioned your dad obviously being a treasurer before you got your degree in accounting.
Yeah.
Right, and minors in both business and marketing. Has that focus there in college helped you with what you've been able to do in the position of president today?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I did not go to college as an accounting degree expectation. So I did pre-med for a couple of years. I did pre-law for a year or so. Did international business, learned Japanese for a couple of semesters. So I don't think I really knew what exactly I wanted to do in the beginning. But on the other side of it, I knew that I was there to get an education. I also went to play a sport, so I got to enjoy that as well. And
What sport was that?
baseball.
Baseball.
Yeah, so I got recruited during the summer after, I believe it was my junior or senior year, by the Mount Union coach, and went up and took a visit and got to play there for 4 years. So
Really, very nice.
but it was funny because, I talk to like my nieces and nephews now. I have a nephew who's 18 years old, getting ready to graduate high school. He's sitting there going, I don't know what I want to do. I don't, and we're sitting back telling him, you don't have to know now.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Look at my history. Look at what I've done. Look at, test the waters, test what you want to try out. But ultimately I came back to accounting with the knowledge that someday I could utilize that. So going back to your original question that I kind of went away from, but absolutely, my degree in accounting has been absolutely wonderful for my my job now. It actually worked out really well when I was doing sales. The business minors was just more to round things out.
Sure.
It wasn't necessarily something that I was looking at and saying, this is something I want to go into. It's more just to round out.
Yeah,
I had
sure.
a couple of classes and it kind of finished out that way. So, but I was very close to getting majors in both of those as well, a few courses away from each one.
So after graduation, you went to Republic Wire and started your career.
I did.
And as you've alluded to in our conversation about the importance of being able to understand and be involved with a lot of different positions there. So when you started, you were involved with sales and operations. And
Yes.
Kind of take us through that because obviously the history of the organization and the history of Jeremy going through that.
Sure.
I mean, there was a lot of parallels, I'm sure.
Absolutely. So I started in inside sales. And after a couple of years at inside sales, I walked into Ron's office one day and said, hey, I think our shipping department needs a little work. I don't think we're going to be able to get to the heights that you want to get to if we stay in this fashion. And he looked back at me and said, if you think it's broke, go fix it.
Whoa.
And he tossed me into the daily operations role after I was out there for about a year or two and spent my time kind of building it around the way we wanted to see it look. I went back in and I said, I think we got some issues in production. He said, if you think there's a problem, go fix it. Tossed me into overall production, and that's really kind of the path I took.
Wow.
So every time I went in and said, hey, I see a problem, he would look back at me and say, then go fix it. So,
Wow.
And I think sometimes, and I'm not saying he just kind of gave me open book, right?
Sure.
There's always going to be, I still had him to report to. I still had a number of people I had to report to and discuss things with and things of that nature. And I still had a wealth of knowledge. Mark Halsebush, our CFO, now controller, Ron, and then we had sales guys that were older and more experienced than I was. So I had a wealth of knowledge to utilize. So I would utilize that and then make my own decisions and kind of try to mold it around what I felt we were trying to get to.
Sure.
So the nice part about it is it gave me an opportunity to get involved in literally every aspect of the business.
Absolutely.
So, some of the most interesting stories of business that I have are the things that kind of stand out to me, I guess I should say, is days like, I remember one time we had to run 1,000 reels of 4 solid bare copper, which I know that means nothing to anybody listening to this, but you know, I had to run 1,000-foot reels of 4 solid bare copper, and I couldn't get anybody to stay overtime, so I stayed there myself till midnight running a machine with one other person who could stay, and we got it all done in one night. So, you know, stories like that, while it seems boring, it seems like, okay, that's just a little blip in your radar screen. You're the president of the company now. Why would you remember something like that? The reason you remember those things is because they molded you around it, right? So you realized, look, I've got what it takes to do this. Sure. I can go out and do this when I need to do it. Sure. I can learn these things when I need to learn them. And it allowed you to kind of grow in confidence, or allowed me to kind of grow in confidence in what I was going to do. And the ultimate of it was obviously where I'm at now.
Absolutely.
So I was able to take all those little different experiences, pull them all together, put them in a basket for me to pull out every once in a while.
Sure.
And I still say the one thing that I have loved more about this industry than anything, and it's not an industry that, if you would have asked me when I was 10 years old, I would have never told you I was going to be in the copper wire industry. So even with my father in it. It's one of those things where every business has something, right? Every business has something that people can go back and tell stories about. And my favorite stories about the industry have nothing to do with the product themselves. It's always about the people that I'm around, the customers I'm around, the vendors, the operators, the managers, whoever it may be. And those are the fun stories that you're going to remember when it's all said and done.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm sure there's people that you've hired over the years, that story you just told, where you see yourself in them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you could see them doing some of the same things you've done.
Absolutely.
When, it was basically no one was around and you went and got the job done.
Absolutely. And I think, that's one of the amazing things when you put people in a spot to see what they're made of, so to speak. You put somebody, give them an opportunity, and do they take advantage of it or do they not?
That's right.
And all the people, within our company, all the people that are managers within our company, a lot of them have grown up in the company.
Sure. We've
got a lot of managers that have been there 20 plus years. And a lot of these guys, that's just kind of how it developed, and you gave them an opportunity, said, hey, just like Ron did to me, you think it's broke, go fix it, And when I had those opportunities, because somebody did that for me, I started doing that for other people. And it's amazing what you get out of people when you do that, right?
Absolutely.
It is absolutely amazing. People just never fail to surprise. And ultimately, you're going to have some people that just don't match up, but the vast majority of people you find, if you give them an opportunity, you give them a little bit of positive encouragement, it works out really well.
So when that first happened to you, where you went to your father and just said, hey, Ron, this is what's going on, and he said to you, okay, go fix it.
Yeah.
That take you off guard? Were you surprised by that reaction?
Yeah, there's no doubt. That's kind of how my father's been to me my entire life, so it wasn't completely off guard, but considering, I'm 2 years out of college, 2 years into the industry, I don't really know a whole lot. I'm not an operations background, things like that. Absolutely, it took me by surprise in that regard. But from a standpoint of who he is and what he does, it did not take me by surprise at all. Awesome. That's just who he is.
Absolutely.
He likes to throw the opportunities at people and see how they respond.
Absolutely. So in 2016, you became president.
I did.
And your dad moved to CEO.
Yes, he did.
That's right.
Yes.
And so all these different opportunities that you've been able to experience in your knowledge base, now ball's in your court, right?
Yeah, well, not completely. But, there's a funny story behind when I actually became president. We were actually at our annual convention called NEMRA, National Electrical Manufacturers Representative Association, and nobody knew it was going to happen, including myself. And we're in our group briefing, so 20 plus agents in there, multiple, probably 40, 50 people. The only person that actually knew what was going to happen was Ron's assistant, Gina. And he walks up. I did my presentation. It's about an hour-long meeting. I did about a 40-minute presentation. And then he walks up to do his copper analysis. the part that everybody, that's the part that everybody loved. All the agencies loved the copper analysis because they wanted to see what was going to happen during the year. And so, of course, we're all sitting back. I'm taking a breath. 40 minutes is done. I can relax. And first thing he says is, I've got a big announcement. And he says that, and he goes about doing it. And, of course, I'm shocked. I look over at my regional sales guys. They're looking at me. I'm going, I had no idea that was going to go on. So we get done with the meeting. And after everybody, of course, says their congratulations, and we all separate, I walk out to Ron, and I said to Ron, I looked at him, I go, why? I just looked at him and said, why would you do this? And he said, what do you mean, why would I do this? And I said, Ron, we're booming. Mm-hmm. I'm leading the sales team. We're killing it on the sales side. You've got the operations under control. We've got good ops manager. We're doing great. Why would you upset the apple cart right now? And he said, because you're ready. And I said, well, what makes you think I'm ready? I said, I've never done any president role. And he looked at me and he said, I've just watched you over the years, and the way that you've adjusted your train of thought to understand that it's not always about the sale. It's not always about the moment. It's about the bigger picture. He said, over the years, I saw that develop. I saw that grow. And he said, at this point, you look at the bigger picture more than you do the moment, and that's why I think you're ready.
Well, he was right. Yeah, he was right? He was right.
I think the jury's still out there.
Well, let me tell you. So with that said, okay.
Yes.
Today, and this is in Westchester Township now.
Yeah.
Republic Wire is a global company manufacturing 11 different product lines.
Yes.
At a 400,000 square foot facility.
Correct.
With 24-hour shipping and receiving.
Correct. And adding on a 320,000 square
and we're
foot
going to
facility
we're going to talk about that.
Yep.
But what you've been able to do from 3,000 square feet
correct
to 400,000 square feet and become the fourth largest in the U.S.
With our eyes on 3.
That's right. In Westchester Township.
Yes.
And a lot of this has happened, obviously, during your tenure, coming up throughout the organization, and most recently as president of the organization. Talk about that.
I appreciate that. I never give myself the credit, and I think everybody's that way, right? I mean, anybody that gets up to a level that understands the full breadth of the level, understands that I can't do all that by myself. And there's a ton of people that I can't even list off all the names at this point that have helped me along the way, been a part of our company, helped our company along the way, whatever it may be. And all of those people played a part in that. But we started when we were back in 97 when I joined the company. We were somewhere in the neighborhood of a 30 million pound company, I think. And we've more than tripled that. Going on quadruple. And from that standpoint, we've still got many eyes set on much more. We've got some plans for different things to continue to kind of flesh out our company. But over the years, all the different things that I've been involved in from a sales side, I do have, of course, some stories that or some feathers in my cap, whatever you want to call them.
Sure, absolutely.
I think my favorite one is the Annixter one. I teamed up with the Annixter Group back in the early 2000s, which if you don't know that name, they're based in Chicago. They're one of the largest electrical distributors in the country. And myself and the buyer just happened to hit it off great. He loved that I was willing to share knowledge. He was looking for knowledge. We basically tag teamed each other with that. And we went from a $500,000 company with them or sales company with them to over 31 million. So, that's probably my favorite story.
Sure, absolutely.
But we were talking a little earlier about the people, right?
Right.
Some of the fun stories I've got, there's a company down in Texas, and I'm not going to bring up names, but a company down in Texas where the individual was leaving another company. He was actually the president of another company. He and I had a nice relationship. He calls me up and says, hey, can you meet me down at Papacitos, which anybody who's been to Texas knows Papacitos is this little Mexican restaurant. and we're sitting across the table from each other on a picnic table over chips and salsa, and he tells me he's leaving a company we're doing $20 million a year with, and asked me to take all that business and give it to him at this new company he's starting. Now that company, I'm looking at this and I'm going, ouch.
Yes.
20 million in sales.
Yeah.
How do I do this?
Yes.
And if I do this right now, because I have to make this decision right now, how do I go back and explain this to Ron?
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And at that point in time, I started thinking back. And Ron always taught me that the relationship is the most important part.
Right.
So I looked at that other individual. I said, look, I wouldn't have done 20 million with that company if it wasn't for you. So you asked me to go with you, I'm going with you. And now that company does over 65 million with us a year. So
something to be said for loyalty too.
There's
right?
loyalty there, right? Another great story, another fun story I've got, where there was a company in Chicago, and the guy could not get credit with anybody. He calls me up. I don't know him from Adam. And I said, okay, give me one person that will vouch for you, and I'll give you some payment terms, and we'll see how it goes. 6 years later, he was able to sell out his company, put his family up for the rest of his life. His first call was to me, and he asked me to come up to Chicago to have breakfast. So
that's
I just
awesome.
happened to be in Chicago. He was like, hey, can you meet me for breakfast? I really got something I want to tell you.
Wow.
So those are the stories that I was mentioning.
Yeah, sure.
Those are the fun ones. Those
Absolutely.
are the ones when you know that you had an effect on somebody's life and their family's life.
No doubt.
Those are the really exciting stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those are guys, you were saying something about loyalty, right? And that loyalty goes both ways. If you learn how to read people the right way, and I'm not saying I'm an expert at it by any means, but if you get a good sense of somebody and you get a good feel for them, and you feel like if you give them loyalty, they're going to give it back
Sure.
to you. You're willing to take some chances on some people.
Absolutely.
And sometimes those chances pan out, sometimes they don't. But on the other side of it, it's more a matter of how do you feel about the person?
Yeah.
Do you feel good about the person you're going to do this with? And I can honestly say, like that Texas story, if for some reason that company didn't make it, I still would have been okay from a standpoint. I would have felt like I did the right
Sure,
thing.
absolutely.
And
that's important.
one thing that I never wanted to do when I got into business, of course, back in the 80s and 90s, you saw all the TV shows and the stories, and you heard stuff about these ruthless businessmen and all this and that. Never wanted to be that.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be a little bit different.
Yes.
And so I have literally based my entire career around the relationship with my customers, vendors, personnel.
That's awesome. We talked about your product lines a little bit, and I don't want to assume, but obviously we know it's the commercial side. Do you do anything on the personal side?
We do both. So, as a matter of fact, I'm building a home right now, and I've got my own wire in my home.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was kind of a neat little thing.
Sure.
But we do have a very robust commercial division and a growing residential division. So we do provide the wire that goes into homes all around the city of Cincinnati, as well as all around the country. We do provide also wire that goes into places like Great American Ballpark, Paul Brown Stadium, large commercial facilities, warehouses, places like this. So we do have a little bit of both. We just
Yes.
started residential it's been about 10 years ago now.
Yes.
Kind of losing track of time as
Sure.
so, but yeah, the residential is our really growing division. The commercial side is still growing. It's just not growing as fast. It's already big enough that the percentage growth is much smaller.
Yes. Well, but still, I was impressed with the fact that let's take this more national.
Yeah.
Kennedy Space Center,
Yeah. We got grounding wire in there.
Disney World,
Yep, grounding wire in there.
SoFi Stadium in Inglewood.
That is actually, we've electrified a big portion of that.
That's right. And obviously, healthcare's big here. Local hospitals.
Yes, hospitals were a big one for us. Schools are a good size one for us. Warehouses, of course. Stadiums. A lot of remodels of Vegas facilities, casinos, things of that nature. It's kind of interesting. Until I got into the industry, I didn't realize everything that we actually could touch on.
Right.
Like you said, Kennedy Space Center. I would have never thought about that. Right? But once you get into it, you realize, holy cow, you touch on a lot more. And to the point where, for a period of time there, the new generation that is coming in as a workforce, likes to take a lot of pride in what they do. They want to go home, they want to go to the bar, whatever they're doing, and meeting with their friends, and they want to say, hey, I made wire that went into Kennedy Space Center.
Absolutely.
I made wire that went into Paul Brown Stadium,
Right.
Those types of things. And so we started promoting that in our cafeteria for a while, and I think we've gotten away from it a little bit, but we used to post pictures. If we did a high-profile job, we would post a picture up in the cafeteria so
sure.
people could say it.
Oh.
Those guys would walk in with their phone, they'd take a picture of it and go, they go to their friends and they say, oh, we made some wire that went into Kennedy Space Center.
Absolutely.
No, you didn't. Look, here's the picture right here. So yeah, it gives a sense of pride for people when you get those opportunities. Unfortunately for us, we don't always know where it's going. A lot of times we're selling to electrical distribution, so we're not selling to that end user. So a lot of times we'll sell to a stocking warehouse that's sending it somewhere high profile, and we don't even know.
Just don't even know.
But there are a good amount of direct jobs that we hear about it right away.
So before you were mentioning about, I mentioned number 4. You said, hey, you're approaching number 3, the largest,
I want number
right?
3.
You want number 3. All right.
I wouldn't mind having number 2, but that's a little bit of a stretch.
But you also talked about, obviously, different awards. And one of them I thought was says a lot about what you've been able to do, Deloitte's Top 100 ranking. How many years in a row have you received that?
I think it's 2 decades now.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's 21 or 22 years.
So let's talk a little bit about that for maybe people who don't recognize how impressive that award is.
Yeah, the Deloitte Top 100, first entry was somewhere back in 04, 05, something like that. And we were like number 98. And that's the top 100 companies across the city of Cincinnati that are privately held, as you well know. And it's a very big honor for a privately held company to know that, in the city of Cincinnati, you're a top 100 company. That's a rarefied air. And we are now, I think, number 34 or 32, if I remember right, somewhere in that neighborhood. And it's funny to say, sometimes we'll go back and we'll tell people after the meeting, because when you go down to the luncheon and you have the presentation and everything, they give you the booklet, show you where you're at, and then you can see where everybody else is at. And I jokingly said to our people back at the facility, I said, "Y'all know we're bigger than the Cincinnati Reds, right?" And so because we topped Cincinnati Reds last year, so
that's awesome.
So yeah, it's fun to say those type of things.
Absolutely,
because obviously, anytime you can bring up a big name that everybody knows, and you can say, "Well, you're in a company that's bigger than the Cincinnati Reds." They're like, wait, what? Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of fun.
In today's business, a big push has been to go green, and that green energy has been a big push for you guys and moving your organization. I'm sure something you're very proud of, because you've seen it over the past 9 years as president.
Yeah, no, we actually started a green energy division for a period of time. Realized that we didn't need its own separate division. It was able to be consumed within our division, so we kind of broke off of that, but we still maintain a utility division. So we just kind of consumed it inside that. But yeah, the copper push, for business people that have been watching commodities and things like that, they see copper kind of slowly taking off, and they're reading stories about how copper is going to be at this number by 2028, and it's going to be a shortage across the world, and so on and so forth. It's a lot driven by that green energy push. As a standard electrical vehicle is 3 times the amount of copper as a combustible engine. So there's one. We've done numerous wind farms. The wind farms for visual purposes, the wire's about that big around, and we do 250,000 feet of it at a time in a wind farm. We started it way back in ethanol. We did get involved in the ethanol. So green energy, we understand, is going to be something that is going to drive this country moving down the road, and we wanted to be a part of it. So we really kind of jumped in. Some names that a lot of your listeners are going to know. We had the solar contract for Tesla for a period of time. We have since backed away from that. That was actually one that was through that Annixter group that I was talking about earlier. We do a large amount of solar energy stuff, a large amount of wind energy stuff, to the point where, with this new facility that we're building, that is our first 100% green energy facility. So we've got solar energy powering it. We've got electrical inside of it. So it's something that we're really excited about. It's something that we could actually, something that we're getting involved in. We can actually promote it by saying, hey, we do it too.
Sure.
So
now, is this initiative led by you?
The solar?
Yes.
Yes.
As once again, something to be proud of.
Yeah. Well, I have to admit, it was the conversation started over a bourbon. But if you know the MeLink Solar people, I don't know if you do or not, but they're over there on the east side of the city. I think they've done some stuff with like Cincinnati Zoo and some people like that. But we were at a function. It was a bourbon tasting situation. We just happened to be sitting across the table from each other and around the table, and we started having discussions. And they said, "Hey, can we come out and talk to you?" And I said, "Absolutely, come on out. Let's have a discussion."
Yes.
So, and it all worked out good. We're going to be able to feed, I think, 20% of the energy back to the market, and it's a good investment. Long term, it's a good investment.
Absolutely. Well, we talked about, obviously, a Westchester-based company. You started off with 3,000 square feet. Well, it's moved and grown, and I think you've really had like 4 different expansions in that the current building you have that's 400,000 square feet.
Yeah.
But now you're taking it and actually moving it to another opportunity. It continues where it is, but you're moving your corporate office and operations over to a 320,000 square foot, $20 million new facility on State Route 747, Princeton Glendale Road, also in Westchester Township. You could have gone elsewhere, and you decided to stay in Westchester Township.
And I'll be honest, the Westchester Township trustees and everybody in Westchester has been so phenomenal to us that that was a big driver, right? We wanted to stay in Westchester. We wanted to maintain it in Westchester. So every time we looked around, Fairfield Township was after us, Fairfield was after us, Monroe was after us, Springdale was after us, and we went looking everywhere. We really did. And when it came said and done, we'd always come back to Westchester and say, "Are you sure? You want us to get out of this area? You sure?" And they always responded phenomenally. Yes. And when it all came said and done, they actually started looking around with us and saying, "Okay, no, we are going to find a location for you that we can keep you in Westchester." And ultimately, it worked out great. We got a nice profile right there on a main drag into the city of Westchester. We're going to have a brand new office building that's a gorgeous office building. Arco and the GC who did the job has just done a great job of really making it. I call it the Taj Mahal of the copper industry right now. So. Awesome. I just love the offices, love the warehouse. And we got tired of the 30,000 square foot addition, so we just decided to go big and go 320. But you're right. We did have about 4 or 5 different additions to that facility over there. That's a 400,000, and ultimately that 300,000 is great for us because it expands our shipping capabilities, it expands our stocking capabilities, and ultimately opens up a lot of square footage for new manufacturing capabilities.
Absolutely. And plus what it does, obviously doubling in size, you're adding 40 new jobs.
Yes. That is going to be something that we're very excited about. Anything that we can do to continue to grow our staff is a wonderful thing. And some of that's going to take some time. You got to get machines in, sure. Things of that nature. But all of those machines are going to have to be staffed. And absolutely. And what that does is, as you grow, you find other things that you need to staff. You change. Like, for example, right now our residential division and our commercial division in insulation are one. Eventually, that'll break out into 2. So now you need a new manager, 2 new supervisors, the whole 9, all the way down. And then you need a whole staff behind that. So, and then as you grow your exterior staff and you ship more, now you need to grow your in-office staff because you need to collect more money. You need to throw out more payables, all that stuff. So it just continues to develop and grow and kind of blossom. And one thing that was interesting for me for a long time in my career, especially early on, but has gotten to a point where we can't do it anymore because of the size we're getting to. When you're in a family-owned business, you wear multiple hats, right? Everybody knows this, right? And at one point, I was operations manager, VP of sales, or national sales manager. I was traveling all over the country. I was doing all these different things. And then I'd come back and I had to get operations all collected. So when you get to this point where you're getting to this size, you realize that you've forgotten to staff a lot of things, and we're getting a lot. You're going to get a lot just from that, right?
Absolutely.
So, but the new offices, I believe it comfortably would maintain about a group of 40. That would be my rough guess estimate. And we don't know that we'll ever get to that size in our office area, but 20, 30 people would not at all be out of range.
Oh, that's
so, I know we built the cafeteria to comfortably sit 20 people. So unless everybody's taking their lunch at the same time, we got a little problem. But no, we're really excited about that distribution facility.
And you should. And so it's pretty well finished. I mean,
Yeah.
you're going to actually, you've started some operations over there, but you're really going to be able to full bore and as far as opening sometime this year. Is that correct?
Yes. So we're actually already shipping out of it as of January 1st. So we've got our temporary occupancy, and we're able to utilize the warehouse space. We just cannot access the office space yet.
Yes.
So we need a little bit of luck, a little bit of good weather to finish some sidewalks and some concrete and things like that. And once that happens, we're in full bore.
That's good. Well, I know also one of the things you're most proud of is that the copper wire products, about 98% of them are made in the U.S. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And so it's a U.S.-based organization. I know how,
Absolutely.
talking to your dad and knowing that from you, how important that is.
It really
what you do.
is. We do have some competitors that are coming in from exterior or from foreign places, but the vast majority of the industry as a whole in the U.S. specifically is driven by U.S. manufacturers, and that's a neat thing to say. Even the ones that aren't us are U.S.-based manufacturers, and their entire operations based in the U.S. So, that's something we are very, very proud of. It is something that we have always very heavily promoted to the point where, if you look at, say, it's called NMB wire. If you look at our NMB wire, which is the residential division wire, that has the American flag on it, says made in the USA underneath it, the whole nine, and that's something that we absolutely make sure that people are well aware of.
Absolutely, that's good. You've basically talked all along about the relationship you've had with your dad, how he's helped and supported you along the way. I know you have others within your family that work for Republic Wire. For somebody who is watching this and says, that they're involved with a family-owned business, what suggestions, recommendations, what advice would you give them to be a part of and to be able to keep the business and the family going both at the same time and have the successes that you've had?
Understand that there are going to be peaks and valleys. There are definitely going to be peaks and valleys. You can think that everything is going to be absolutely perfect. You can hope that everything's going to be absolutely perfect. And unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way. But on the other side of that, if your family life is strong enough and ultimately you learn how to separate the two, that is probably the hardest part, especially early on in your career. I know those first few years, one of my sisters was inside sales at the same time I was. And it got to a point where when we went out to happy hour with our friends, we were arguing so much about business that our friends said they were going to stop going to happy hour with us unless we learned to separate. So, we had to learn that when we walked out that door and that door shut behind us, you leave business there, you go on to personal. And there's going to be highs and lows in that, especially when you're in a long-term career. I've been doing this now for 25, 26 years. I've had every sibling at one point or another, Heather, Nicole, and Trent, all in the business. I've got nieces, nephews, my kids that all want to be part of the business. My wife has been great doing some different things like, different councils and things like that, kind of helping with all the celebration portion. Sure. And kind of she and Ron's former wife actually would build these things around it. And they would put this whole party together, and all we had to do was show up.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
So every bit of my family has been at least a small part.
Sure.
I was talking about my nephew. He worked in maintenance for a period of time this year. So, the nice thing is that when you have a family-owned business, you can put it out there to the entire family and say, if you want to be a part of it, please, we are going to open you with welcome arms, right? But if you don't, you have the luxury that you don't have to.
Yeah, sure.
That's why I'm here. That's why Ron's there. That's why we're doing the things that we're doing, is to say, look, if you want to take your opportunity and go live doing something else, go do it. We want you to follow your dreams. We're back here in case you need us.
Absolutely.
And from that standpoint, my sister Nicole did she's going to kill me if I forget this number, 27 years of teaching, I think. over between Mount Healthy, Fairfield, a couple other places. And now she's our human resources director. She decided that teaching back during COVID wasn't for her anymore. She called me up and said, "Hey, is there something we can do?" And I said, "Yeah, teachers make great human resources directors."
Yeah,
so,
it,
it can be as simple as that, and it can be, difficult in other areas.
Yeah.
So, but if there's one major piece of advice I would give anybody getting into a family business, before that first year is up, learn how to separate personal and business.
Good
and if
point.
you can do that, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, good advice. Good advice. Well, with new technologies and evolving customer demands, what does the future look like for Republic Wire
Oh.
in the electrical industry?
Well, I already told you, I want to be number 3, Joe.
So what is it going to take, Jeremy, to do that?
We're not far off, actually. We are probably, I'd say maybe a 50 to 60 million pounds off would be about my guess. But, from our standpoint, the future really for us is automation. The future for us is to continue to develop and grow our customer base as well as our product listing. And that's really what this move, about that 320,000 square foot move was.
Yeah.
It was opening up that available space to do more. And the bigger we get, the more people want from us. And, I say this to our banks and things like that all the time. We have spent 40 plus years of organic growth. It's been Ron scrimping, saving, doing the things he had to do. When I when I took it over, learning how to do those different things. And for the longest time, it was all about find something used, find something cheap, we'll refurbish it, we'll make it work. And now we get the luxury of saying, no, we're going to buy it new. It's going to be brand new. We're going to get the top end capacity. It's going to have the utmost technology. Everything's going to be current. And that's a great place to be in. It really is. You're not worried about whether or not you're going to get anything out of the machine. You're worried about how much you can get out of the machine. So from our standpoint, the future for us, we're not stopping. I joke around all the time with different people I know and say, nobody's ever told me I've been short on ambition. So, I don't want 3, I want 2. One may be a stretch. I mean, one's probably about a $9 billion company, so that might be a little bit of a stretch. But, from my standpoint, I really just want to continue to do it the right way.
That's good.
And from my standpoint, I don't want to say our company has proven that if you do it the right way, the benefit comes.
Absolutely.
And when you do it the right way, you continue to do it the right way, it's so easy to promote your company. It really is. I mean, for me to be able to walk around and talk to my customers, and my customers don't even need to hear it anymore, but when I was selling our company to people in the early 2000s, I would sell it as a relationship-based company. And a lot of people just, okay, whatever. That's what everybody says. You're relationship-based. And then we proved it. And when we prove it, then all of a sudden people go, wait a second. You just said something that you followed through with it. And I used to joke that I traveled 48 states at one point for 15 years. And to the point where I tell the story about there was one time I was only home on weekends for a 3-month stretch. And about 2/3 of the way through that time, I literally woke up in a hotel, rolled over, looked at the phone just to find out where I was. I had no clue where I was. But I traveled so much that I used to joke that I can't lie to you. If I lie to you, I won't be able to track it. I won't be able to come back next year and tell you something better, So, I used to joke that I can't tell a lie about it because I wouldn't be able to keep track of them.
Sure.
So from my standpoint, it just kind of solidified the whole conversation that, hey, look, we're just going to tell you what we're going to do.
Yeah.
We're going to try to do it to the best of our ability. We're going to support you whatever way we can from a relationship standpoint. And ultimately, if you don't like it, we understand. But if you do like it, you're going to really love it. Yeah. And you're going to enjoy doing business with us. And that's really who we've become. And it's easy to promote that. It's easy to promote a business that has been developed around doing the right thing.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
This has been Jeremy Rosenbeck, President of Republic Wire. Jeremy, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. It's been a great time.
Okay.
Java with Joe has been brought to you by Kemba Credit Union, sponsored in part by First Choice Coffee and Real Vision. Thanks for listening.